Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Spandana Spurti Financial Limited Q4 FY21 earnings conference call. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company, which are based on the beliefs, opinions, and expectations of the company as on date of this call. These statements are not guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star, then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Ms. Padmaja Reddy, Managing Director of Spandana Spurti Financial Limited. Thank you, and over to you, Ms. Reddy.
Good evening and welcome you all to Q4 of FY21 and full year of FY21 financial and business update call of Spandana. It was more than a year since the nationwide lockdown was enforced in March 2020. While we have been managing the disruption caused by COVID-19 in the last 3 quarters, Q4 gave us a respite with business getting back to almost near normal. This was the first financial year in which the total revenue exceeded 1,500 crore. Revenue increased by 40% quarter on quarter from 344 crore to 480 crore and 9% year on year. Q4 had 33 crore income recognized upfront towards direct assignment transaction and 23.6 crore right of recovery. Q4 performance was much better compared with the previous quarter in terms of loan disbursements hitting all-time high and collection efficiency hitting near normal rate. Though there was movement of portfolio from stage 1 to stage 2 and 3, we have seen huge reduction in PAR 30 plus. So 2,426 crore was disbursed in Q4, which is all-time high that we have ever disbursed in a quarter. Loan disbursement increased from 49 crore in Q1 to 1,634 crore in Q2 and 2,300 crore in Q3 to 2,426 crore in Q4. Full year's disbursement has been 6,426 crore as against 8 crore that we disbursed last year. Disbursements took off only in the last 2 quarters as most of the states had intermittent lockdowns till August 20. Collection efficiency for the quarter increased from 96.2% in Q3 to 100.6% in Q4, including the arrears. Number of zero paid borrowers reduced drastically to 61,000 in Q4. We opened 61 new branches in FY21 and these branches were opened in 39 districts of 11 states. Most of the new branches were opened in states where we have less penetration and these states are also less penetrated in terms of number of MFIs operating base and the average AUM per household. Of these 61 new branches, 5 are gold loan branches opened under Chris Financial Limited, which is our subsidiary in Andhra Pradesh. Portfolio grew by 393 crore from 7,764 crore in Q3 to 8,157 crore in Q4, recording 19% growth YOY and 5% quarter on quarter. Out of 8,157 crore portfolio, 5,771 crore portfolio had been created post-COVID from June 2020 onwards. This accounts for 81% of total loans in terms of number of loans and 85% in terms of portfolio. As communicated in the last quarter, all new loans disbursed from November 2019 have monthly repayment cycle. We transition from bi-weekly to monthly as borrowers do not want to commit higher time for attending center meetings in order to repay installments. This has helped us a lot in the last 1 year as loan officers were not required to pay 4 to 5 visits in a month. Monthly loans have been performing significantly better than weekly and bi-weekly loans. With the collection cycle starting from 2nd of every month and ending by 10th, there is ample time left to follow up with the borrowers who have not paid their installment on the scheduled day. Monthly loans have 99% collection efficiency in Q4 versus weekly and bi-weekly loans having 86% collection efficiency. Spandana's portfolio quality too improved with a 30-plus portfolio reducing from 9.4% in Q3 to 6.8% in Q4. GNPA was at 3.1% and NNPA was at 1.4%. We made 695 crore provision in the last 5 quarters, including Q4 of FY20. Of this, we wrote off 196 crore in December and 166 crore in March, totaling to 362 crore. After writing off 362 crore, we still carry 412 crore provision, which accounts for 5.1% of total AUM. This includes 53 crore provision on standard portfolio. There has been significant recovery from the portfolio we wrote off in December. In the last 4 months till April, 20.4 crore has been recovered, which is almost 45% of the total demand from these loans. So Crest Financial Limited, which is a subsidiary of Spandana and is an NBFC that offers secure loans and group loans to households whose income is above the threshold of microfinance borrowers. Performance of CFL has been superb as it has done exceedingly well on every parameter in the last year. Its portfolio grew by 140% from 168 crore to 403 crore. Portfolio has been well diversified across segments and products. Besides group loans, it also offers loans against property, business loans and gold loans. CFL disbursed 326 crore in FY21. CFL has operations only in Andhra and Telangana states, and these states have done exceedingly well with collections hitting 99% by October 20 itself. Revenue of CFL grew by 60% from 35 crore to 56 crore YOY. Portfolio quality has been robust with a GNPA at 1.1% and NNPA at 0.9%. So coming to liabilities, we raised 5,480 crore debt in FY21 as against 5,120 crore in FY20. In Q4 alone, a total amount of 1,912 crore was raised. So we wanted to diversify and broaden the funding base and avoid dependency on few lenders. Our efforts to raise funds from capital market yielded very good results, and we raised 834 crore through NCDs and MLDs. This does not include funds raised through NCDs under TLTRO and PCGS. Though it was a little expensive in the third quarter, we could bring down the rates in Q4. Despite paying little higher rates on NCDs and very few DA transactions that we were able to do this year compared to last year, overall financial cost ratio still reduced from 8% in FY20 to 7.7% in FY21. Average cost of borrowing also reduced by 50 basis points from 11.9% to 11.4%. On-balance sheet debt outstanding increased from 3,025 crore in FY20 to 5,373 crore in FY21, resulting in leverage ratio increasing to 2.6 times. So we also added 5 new lenders in Q4, and in the year we added 60 new lenders. Crest Financial raised 208 crore in FY21 from banks and financial institutions. Till last year, CFL was dependent on Spandana for debt, and it started raising debt on the strength of its own balance sheet. And it is heartening to note that number of lenders in the first year itself increased from 5 to 11. Total cash and bank balance remained at 1,135 crore, which is 13% of total assets versus 10% in Q3 of FY21. So loan officers in the usual scenario spend 50% of their time on collections and the rest 50% on business expansion, which includes acquisition of new clients and disbursement of loans. This changed drastically in the last 1 year, with almost 100% time spent on collections and still not being able to meet all the borrowers as per the schedule. We had to maintain one loan officer for every 400 borrowers and to enable them to reach all borrowers within the scheduled time. It was a deliberate attempt made to increase number of loan officers in Q4, and as such number of loan officers increased from 6,100 to 6,720. Average portfolio per employee increased from 0.8 crore to 0.95 crore from FY20 to FY21. Average portfolio for loan officer also increased from 1.122 crore to 1.2 crore in FY21. Average portfolio per branch increased from 6.8 crore in FY20 to 7.8 crore in FY21. There was a slight increase in the cost to income ratio, which increased from 19.9% to 21.9%. It's basically 200 basis points. And this was due to A, high upfront income that we recognized in FY20, owing to multiple DA transactions, and B, the lowering of interest rate, and C, the write-off of interest income. NIM reduced slightly from 16.7% in FY20 to 15.4% in FY21, despite the reduction in financial cost ratio. This is again due to reduction in the lending rate, as we reduced interest rate by almost 280 basis points in the last 1 year. And the other reason, as I mentioned earlier, we have done very few DA transactions, and further there was an interest written off. Operating costs continue to be lowest at 3.24% in FY21 versus 4% in FY20. Abhiram, our group company, contributed just 4 crore towards rent for the quarter. Had Abhiram not contributed this amount, operating costs would have been 3.29%, and the difference is just 5 basis points. Credit costs for the year stood at 8.8%. Pre-provision operating profit decreased from 892 crore in FY20 to 846 crore in FY21. This reduction is due to 219 crore upfront income we recognized last year versus just 33 crore that we recognized this year. And as I mentioned, the interest lending rate reduced by 280 basis points, and there was some interest which was written off. PBT reduced from 618 crore in FY22 to 200 crore in FY21, and PAT reduced from 352 crore in FY22 to 145 crore in FY21, while the pre-provision ROA was intact at 11.6% for FY21. Post-provision and tax, it was just 2%, 5.4%, while the normalized ROE without considering provision, it was 20.9%. So Chris Financial made 17 crore PAT on an average book of 286 crore, and CFL's share of portfolio being 4.9%, but its share in profit was 9%. Net worth increased 5 times in the last 4 years, from 537 crore in 2017 to 2,749 crore, and capital adequacy ratio was healthy at 40%. And state level, district level diversification is very much intact. 3 largest states, MP, Odisha, Karnataka, constitute 48% of the total portfolio. Karnataka replaced Maharashtra as 3rd largest state after MP and Odisha, as we have been doing disbursement very cautiously in Maharashtra. Only 10 districts have more than 1% of the total AUM, and no district has more than 2.2% of the total portfolio. We continue to maintain 94% rural and 6% urban in terms of AUM. Our agile risk management helped us avoid stage with high MFI penetration. As such, we don't have operations in Assam, and our portfolio in West Bengal is less than 50 crore, as we have been pulling back in the last 2 years. We had several rounds of discussions with Reserve Bank of India on their inspection reports, pointing out that we charged excess interest rate from Q3 FY18 to Q3 FY20. The guidelines state that interest charged on loans to be calculated on average loan outstanding exactly the same way that cost of fund is calculated on average debt outstanding. The guidelines also state that margin is a difference between interest charged on loans and cost of funds, which should not exceed 10%. As stated in the guidelines, we always made sure that the margin was not higher than 10%, while RBI's interpretation is interest charged on loans should not be higher than cost of fund plus 10%, though point number 4 and 5 of pricing guidelines clearly indicate that interest charged on loans to be calculated on average loan outstanding, and the difference between interest charged on various loan products should not be more than 4%. While the management is very clear that we had not charged excess interest rate, and RBI kept on saying this, that we charged excess interest rate. And our queries on why the guidelines state that interest charged on loans is to be calculated on average loan outstanding was never answered by RBI. We sought guidance of board on it, and the board decided to refund the excess interest charged as opined by RBI. We submitted a proposal to RBI agreeing to repay interest on closed loans and reduce interest by 1% on active loans, and this proposal was submitted in November. While the loan level calculation is still pending, we made 55 crore provision towards refund of interest on closed loans. We propose to calculate excess interest charged on closed loans and refund that amount in case the borrower had not taken subsequent loan or no loan given to her had ever been written off. For borrowers who have an active loan, this amount, the average amount which comes to 200, this amount will be credited to the existing active loan, and in case any of her loans were written off, this amount will be recognized as recovery out of written off loans. For the remaining active loans, we propose to reduce 1% interest rate while rescheduling loans post moratorium, and RBI said that they will come back at a later stage. Coming to the impact of second wave, while we thought that FY22 will be a normal year without having to make additional provision towards COVID, as our balance sheet carries sufficient provision to cover the impairment of portfolio caused by COVID last year, it was very, very discouraging to see what transpired in April and May. Number of cases peaked in May, which is 4 times of last year's peak. So almost every state had announced a lockdown, and few states such as Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, and MP, they did not include, unfortunately, MFIs in essential services. This time, contrary to last year, large number of field staff were infected, and some of them were also hospitalized. But however, the difference compared to last year and this year, while we shut down all branches almost for 2 months, so while we wanted to open after 1 month, it still took time for us to get back the staff and again open branches. This time, that has not happened, and at least all those borrowers who are having cash and who are willing to repay the installment, so our staff are able to reach out to them. So we have taken care of all employees in these testing times. Each employee has 3 lakh covered towards health insurance, which also covers COVID. Besides that, we also extended some more financial support to help them buy medicines, oximeter, etc. All affected employees are given 15 days paid leave. So as 70% of our loans are now having monthly repayment schedule, and all these loans are collected by 10th, there was no much of impact in April. However, collection efficiency in April, because Maharashtra had lockdown from 25th or 27th of March. However, collection efficiency in April fell by 5% to 95% as against 100.6% in March 21. So Maharashtra had early lockdown from third week of March onwards. 10 to 15% of our staff fell sick and they could not attend the work due to 15% staff going on leave. Either they are sick or family members are not well. We could not reach out to all borrowers on the scheduled day of payment. Once again, the livelihoods of borrowers got impacted very badly due to lockdown. And for example, Rajasthan, which is very, very badly affected as we operate the Gujarat border districts. So most of the spouses of our borrowers, they once again came back to Rajasthan as all factories, constructions and diamond factories were shut down and again shut down in Gujarat. So except agriculture, which was more or less intact, every other economic activity got impacted. We are expecting most of the states to end lockdown and curfews by May end, as the number of new cases are falling consistently in the last 15 days. So if that happens, we may have to provide 2 to 3% more provision in the FY22. And we are hopeful of generating at least 5 to 6% ROE in FY22 and the portfolio growing to 10,000 crore if the lockdown comes to an end, at least by 10th or 15th of June. So we are very bullish on gold loans and we see less competition from organized players in tier 2, tier 3 towns of AP and Telangana. And we are planning to open 50 to 75 new branches in FY22 and grow the portfolio to 250 to 300 crore from the current level of 40 crore. So with this overview, I'm opening the floor for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Shripal Doshi from Equirus. Please go ahead.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening. I hope everybody is safe at the management level. My question was with respect to the collection efficiency against the billing of the month. So while we had indicated that during December, that number was close to 93%, which is excluding the arrears. What would be that number for comparable number for Feb, March, April, and May?
Yeah, good evening, Shripal. So it was 93% for December, and without arrears, it was 94% for March, and sorry. 90. Sorry, it was 96% for March, and again, it came down to 92% in April.
And ma'am, how is it trending in May month? Some color if you can give.
In fact, January it went up to 94%, and again February it increased by 2%, and it stayed at the same level in March, despite that Maharashtra was in lockdown and a few other states started showing the signals of increasing cases. But in April that has come down to 92%, which is a 4% dip. And May, I have reports, as I said that all our loans will be closed by 10th as per the schedule. But however, our staff are not able to meet all the borrowers this time, as 20% of the staff they were not available in branches. The collections are still going on. We are meeting the borrowers that we could not meet till 10th. And at this point in time, the collection efficiency is some 82%. But however, we have one more week to follow up with all these borrowers. and we are hoping that that will increase.
Right. Ma'am, the other linked question to this was that which are the three, like say 3-4 top states which are having the least collection efficiency, and what are the kind of challenges that we are facing there?
Yeah, for us, it's Kerala. Kerala has lowest collection efficiency, and there I think it's more to do with the culture. So Kerala is very silent in terms of allowing MFIs to operate in the state. So I understand that there is ambiguity to that extent. But again, the staff out there, it is a state-specific issue. So the moment lockdown is announced, they don't want to really move out of the branch. They don't want to go and meet the borrower. So all of them, they just sit in the branch and they're just following up in terms of asking borrowers to pay digitally. So here, there is no difference that I could see from the borrower level between Kerala and also Andhra, because Andhra, Telangana, even now, we have 94-95%. In May also we have 94% collection efficiency. I don't see that there is a difference at the borrower level, but it is more from the staff. And the next state which is not really doing great for us is Rajasthan. So Rajasthan here, at least most of the branches have staff. So they're going to the field, they're meeting the borrowers, they're interacting with them. Of course, following that protocol in terms of not conducting center meetings, but they're going and meeting individual borrowers. Out there, it was a serious concern. So and again, we have operations in Pratapgarh, Dungarpur and Banswara, and these three districts, they have so much of dependency on Gujarat for their work. And again, in the last 1 to 2 months, there was a reverse migration. Surat was closed, and all diamond factories in Gujarat were closed, and all textile factories were closed. And and construction activity, I was told that in the last 3 days, permission was given till 2 p.m. But otherwise, while all economic activities were closed, so our borrowers' spouses, they came back from Gujarat and they are now at Rajasthan. So what has happened last year also, Rajasthan started at a very low collection efficiency, but in a month's time, once the lockdown was unlocked, so Rajasthan has shown significant improvement. I'm expecting the same. I don't see Rajasthan as a problem. And this is something different, MP. And MP, so it's a kind of very strict lockdown, and Bhopal, Indore, Jabalpur, the impact particularly on the staff is very, very high. I'm speaking on behalf of the industry, because everybody reported very high number of COVID impacted cases, particularly for staff. So and then again, most of them are not able to reach. And one more reason that I could see in MP is this time soybean, the yield was very, very low. So that also has impacted the collection efficiency. So these are the lowest 3 states.
Okay. Thank you. Just one more question. Since now we will be following the RBI's guidelines on the spread management, so what would be the incremental impact that will come on our NIM, as a business model wise?
I think from February 2020 onwards, so we started following whatever as per RBI norms, cost of fund plus 10%.
Okay. So you have already done that. Okay.
Yeah.
One last confirmation was that, so last quarter our 0+ DPD was 10.9%. Now this quarter it would be 10.3%, right?
Yes, it's 10.3% for this quarter.
Yeah. So this is in addition with the 2.4% write-off that we have taken during the quarter. Fair understanding? Is that a fair understanding?
Yes, correct, Sripal, because mostly, as ma'am mentioned, some back last week, the lockdowns have started in Maharashtra and all. So
Right.
those were added much in the plus.
But if you see like 30 plus free fall, like there is a significant reduction. For example, like a 30 plus, we have 2%, 31 to 60 is 2%, 61 to 90 is 1.6, 2 plus 1.6 it is 3.6, plus 3.1% GNPA, it is like 6.7%.
Right. Right.
Basically, like up to 30 days means like they have skipped only one installment. So at least like we have seen 99% recovery like from that bracket.
Right. Because now we are also moving towards monthly collection model. So yeah.
And again, for example, like if the installment is say, for example, 1,600, and if the borrower has paid 1,500, so like still that borrower will be classified in whatever 1 to 30 bucket.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir, for the detailed answers. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sarvesh Gupta from Maximal Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am, for taking my questions, and hope everyone is safe. So first question, ma'am, you have like 71% of the portfolio, which is your new book, which has been created post the first COVID wave. So now that book has obviously been pristine till March, but I would want to know the collection efficiency from that book of 5,771 crores in April and May to understand how that is behaving.
Thank you, Sarvesh. So we, in terms of number of loans, like that is 71%, and in terms of portfolio, that's about 85%. So April collection efficiency was very much intact, like when it comes to new loans, it was 99.98%. But in May, so it is still at 91%.
So then,
of course, like we have one more week to go, and we are expecting like much more effort being put in this week. So, but at this point in time, like it is 91%.
So yeah, I mean, prior to first wave, we had a book, and then that behaved in a certain manner, as we saw in the first few quarters of last financial year. Now, do you feel is there any reason to believe that this book is going to behave differently? And because will it be a low risk book at all for us, or will it be more or less behave similar to other portfolio which has not been written off yet? Because 91% again is a significant dip, and brings in memories of the first wave or post first wave. So is this book, should we treat it differently, or should it be treated at par with your remaining 20% of the book?
No, if I go back to previous crises, like starting from Kolar, Mysore, Burhanpur, AP crisis, so wherever like we have given new loans to a borrower, so who had like overdue for some point in time. Of course, like when we disbursed the loan, she cleared her overdues, and there was no loan outstanding as far as the previous loan was concerned. But again, like some of these borrowers, for example, between April to October, so like they were in overdue bucket, like they were in 30 days, 60 days. But subsequently, upon clearing overdue, we gave them loan. So if I look at like how these portfolios have performed in terms of like loans given to overdue borrowers at one point in time, so I have seen like so it's not the same 1% credit loss that we have seen when it comes to these loans. Be it like post-AP crisis, of course, like AP behaved much better. But if I look at like loans given to borrowers post-demonetization, the new loans given had a credit loss of 2 to 2.5%. So I expect, like, I don't think that like we will have 0.5 to 1%, but considering like whatever is happening. So considering that like whatever has not happened, maybe 1% might have increased to 1.5 or max 2%. But considering the current situation and for any reason if the lockdown gets extended for a longer period, I expect at least like 2 to 3% losses on this portfolio.
Okay, 2 to 3% is for this 80% of the book, the new loans, right?
Yeah.
And for the remaining part of the book, which is 20%, which is our legacy loans, what kind of provisions?
For that, like we still carry, apart from whatever that we have written off, we still carry 412 crore provision on our balance sheet. So if I look at like a 60 plus, which is mostly getting into 90 days, today we have 295 crore plus 257 crore. 557 crore. So we have 557 crore. So even assuming that like 80% of this will not be paid back, but to that extent, like we have 412 crore provision.
Okay, but for that 1,500 odd crores of legacy book, will 400 crore be enough for the provisioning as of now, or do you feel that further provisioning would be required?
Like 80%, it's almost like 80%. So if you see, like we wrote off 196 crore in December. So January, February, March, like 50% of the demand pertaining to these loans was recovered. So we have taken 80% instead.
Okay, understood. And on your cost of borrowing now compared to your nearest competitor, your cost of borrowing at 11.4% is 250 basis point higher, which is very surprising given your higher capital adequacy, lower NPA, higher AUM growth. So what are the lenders reading differently between you and your nearest competitor when it comes to cost of borrowing? Because this is a significant gap.
It's a question also. Like we are not able to understand. Like while we are comparing the interest rates of ours, like we have common banks, for example, IDFC Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Aditya, who are the common banks? Yes Bank, State Bank of India, so like Bank of Baroda. So when we look at like these common banks, of course, like you know that like we had a CDR history, and the first rating that we had in 2017 was triple B. We were to triple B minus, in fact. So we started there, and like the rating was upgraded till A. Yeah. So, but still, like when we compare the interest rates of common banks, we have not seen more than 25 basis points. So like for example, State Bank of India, which has done 2,500 crore DA with us last year, it was done at 8.5%. So and again, like Bank of Baroda, there is absolutely no difference. We thought that like this 25 basis points difference could be attributed to better rating, like they have one notch higher rating than us. But like we are not able to understand like this difference between 8 to 11%, and whether that 8% is financial cost ratio. So we were wondering, because it cannot be cost of borrowing.
Okay. And
even NABARD, for example, like whatever the funds that they have given to MFIs under TLTRO, it is same. Like first 1 year they charged 7%, and from second year onwards, like they have been charging 11%.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe it's a mixed question.
Like, because within the industry, like we calculate like the average cost of fund, we calculate financial cost ratio, we calculate marginal cost of borrowing. So I think there is some confusion. So if you look at like our financial cost ratio, it is 7.7%.
Okay. And ma'am, final question on this collection in this cycle. I think you alluded to three things. One, you alluded to staff behavior in Kerala. You alluded to problems of Gujarat Industries for Rajasthan, and you alluded to very high impact of COVID on the staff in MP. But our basic premise has been that because Spandana is very much exposed towards rural and people who are mostly deriving their income from basic sort of services which have been milk or agri, etc., which are even in this wave, we haven't seen the impact. I mean, people are consuming everything pretty much at the same pace, apart from some intermittent. So overall, the basic premise that most of our customers are not that much affected, is that holding true as per your ground level experience, or are you seeing some different shades of the impact in this second wave on your customers and their income profiles?
Yeah, I definitely share the similar kind of understanding. But the thing what is happening is like some of the borrowers who have some money in their hands, but they are not ready to use that money to pay the installment because they are saying that the situation is very precarious. So generally agriculture laborers May, June, it's a kind of lean season for them. So agriculture activity begins from July. But right now, for example, as I was always explaining, when it comes to low-income households, so they have diversified sources of income. Of course, most of the women, who are our borrowers, they work as agriculture wage laborers, but their spouses, they will work as construction laborers, they will work as drivers, they will work as painters and all that. And the kids, because they'll be working as mechanics, carpenters, plumbers, so they have diversified sources of income. And sometimes the spouses work as auto drivers and rickshaw pullers and all. So though agriculture to some extent is intact, but again part of the household's income is impacted. And again, wherever there is no impact or where there is a major impact, but again, what our staff are often saying is, borrowers they are saying that yes, we have money, but again we do not know how long this situation will continue, this lockdown. So what we have seen last time, it got extended. That is why we are holding this money, we are saving this money for our basic needs. And again, for any reason, if the lockdown is lifted, next month onwards, we'll be more than happy to pay. So this is, I think, because of the precarious condition, uncertainties associated with the current lockdown, and people are whoever is having money also, they're just holding that money in their hands, not ready to give away, because they don't know when the other sources of income will really get opened up.
And this is slightly higher than the last cycle that we had seen, the behavioral impact of holding on to the resources.
And again, but again, for example, in April, it was just last week, so we started with 2% collection efficiency. At least this time, it has not gone that bad. So no branches shut down, so all staff are there. So we are meeting every borrower. So whoever is willing to pay, we are collecting. And at this point in time, it is still at 80%. So things are really better. Because even in May also, it was some 14% collection efficiency when we reopened all branches last year. So it has not gone down to that level.
Sure. I'll join back at the queue, and thanks a lot for patiently answering all the questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sagar Khanna from PwC. Please go ahead.
Hi, ma'am. Just continuing from the previous speaker, this wave, I believe, is far more prevalent in the rural areas, unlike wave 1. And it has not just affected, it is not just lockdown which is affecting incomes, but I believe productivity and mortality has also impacting incomes. What are your thoughts and how are you assessing things?
It is very different from state to state. So for example, the last 3-4 weeks, the it has big time impacted in Karnataka. So till that time, like April, like it was only in Bangalore and also Ballari and Hubli, like these urban places were more impacted. But
Right.
what we are seeing like in the last 2 weeks is like the rural Karnataka is getting impacted. And again, as you rightly mentioned, like the casualties are much higher. And then again, like from the staff point of view, like we are like more sensitive in terms of asking staff, of course, like following safety measures. But again, like if somebody has lost like some of the close family members, so they were like a little scary in terms of going to field. So that sensitivity is much higher like this year. But again, last year the difference is because 1 month like we were all at home, like it was complete shutdown.
Right.
But whereas this month definitely like the casualties are higher, the medical expenditure has big time increased.
That's right.
And again, whatever the government support that has gone to like this particular segment last year, somehow like we don't see that happening this year, like because the ration, extra ration, and again like each household got like 1,500 rupees to cope up. And then again, unfortunately, like vaccination, like which should have been a kind of solution. But again, like whatever the government has spent on vaccination, it is like less than 0.3 or 0.4% of GDP. Whereas like because of the shutdown, we all know that like the impact of GDP is almost like 2.5 to 3%. By spending 1% of GDP, they should have saved like 2% of GDP, and more than anything, of course, like people's lives and health.
That's right. So, ma'am, considering the scenario in wave 2, would you still hold on to your credit loss number, or do you think that can inch up higher in the current scenario?
No, I did mention in my like initial
in the initial remarks, yeah.
In the remarks, like this year, the normal provision will be like up to 1%. I don't think that like 1% will do. So we have to make at least like 2 to 3% higher than that. So of course it will definitely be not as high as last year. Looking at like situation, most of the states getting into control, and if not like by this month, and like if the lockdown is unlocked by 10th or 15th, so we will have normal July, assuming that, and if there is no third wave, still like I think apart from the standard 1%, we may have to make at least like the 2% more.
So 2-3%, and in addition to the 5% buffer that we hold, right?
Yes.
So we will be drawing down this buffer. So
that 5% is towards legacy loans. Those loans disbursed prior to COVID-20, March 2020.
March 20. Okay. And any change of strategy, considering that wave 2 was a big surprise, and it caught all of us on the wrong foot, and now there are talks of wave 3. Any change in our business strategy?
So, like any other MFI, like we are right now focusing in terms of building like the digital collections. But again, to what extent like we'll be able to motivate the borrower just by calling her is still a kind of question. And then again, like the cash that the borrower is holding has to first of all go to the bank account, and then only like she can transfer the money using like any payment gateways. But
right.
However, like assuming that like some 30-40% of the borrowers with the help of their family members, they can do that. Right now, like we have been working on digital collections.
No, ma'am, not just from a collection efficiency perspective, but in terms of, how we assess risk, what kind of disbursements we would want to do, considering that, disruptions may keep happening from that perspective.
So disbursements, I think like even last 1 year also, while we wanted to disburse about 8,500 crore, we were not in a rush.
Right.
So we were very, very careful and cautious. and we even let like some 2 lakh borrowers to drop out. So whatever the behavior that we have seen during the lockdown and subsequently, even if like some of these borrowers, they have closed their loan, but like if they were too erratic in terms of attending center meetings and like they were in 90 plus bucket for some time, but even post closure of that loan also, so we did not give loan to each and every borrower. So we just let them drop out. That is why like you could see like some drop in the number of borrowers also. So I think like we will be extra cautious and careful. And then again, so of course, like Spandana as an NBFC MFI, the opportunity in terms of diversification is very, very limited. But we have CFL, and there, so like we want to, this could be a kind of real opportunity, because like if NBFCs and NBFC MFIs are not dispersing much, if they become very cautious, of course, like one more reason to be very cautious is availability of funding. And so the liquidity is one more reason. So like we see new opportunities for gold loan, and particularly like the southern states, like where most of, even low income households, like they will have some gold. So we want to really focus on that. So that is doing extremely well. So we want to focus, and we want to open more branches like in small towns, and we already opened some 10 branches, and we want to open like 50 to 70 branches in the next 1 year.
Right. So FY21 our leverage ratio was 2.6 times, right?
Yeah, and again, I'm thinking while answering, so like, and when we were looking at like which are the loans going bad, and
right.
Some like interim loans, like because the borrower has one loan, and then again, so we gave like interim loans. Of course, like in our case, like at any given point in time, not more than 25% of the borrowers had the second loan. But still, like if I look at how each of these loan products are performing, the performance of interim loan is very, very bad. So that says something. So I think like borrowers who are greedy and who are always in lookout for loan, who are taking second loan without the existing loan getting closed, so they are not repaying loans. So I think we need to really think back whether each borrower to have multiple loans. So we have not started, like in the last 1 year, we have not given even one interim loan. So at least next 3-4 years, I don't think that like we are looking at giving one more loan, because like if a borrower has 2 loans, everybody was saying, okay, let me just pay one loan, but I cannot pay one loan.
Right. So ma'am, just one thing on the leverage and the capital adequacy. FY21, our leverage was 2.6x, right?
Yeah, yes.
And where do you see it ending in FY22 based on the current plan and the way we see it today?
As per our risk management policy, like the maximum leverage that we are allowed to have is 4 times.
Right.
So maybe this year, like maybe 3.2 max. 3. While we are looking at 10,000 crore, and we have our own capital, like which is 2,700 crore. So
right.
At the most, like we might raise like 7,000 crore, which means like it is 3, not more than 3 times.
And where would the capital adequacy be at end of FY22?
Similar range, like we will still maintain 40%. So assuming that like this year, so ROA, like as I said, like this year our NIM will be 15%. So FY22,
right.
15% minus 3% credit cost, like that is 12%. Minus 3% operating cost, like that is 9%. And then tax 2.5%.
Right.
So it's 6.5%. So with 6.5% and 3 times leverage, and then again like 6.5 times on even on 8,000 crore also, I think like we should be able to add, if not more, like at least 400 crore PAT this year.
No, so your capital adequacy you'll still maintain at 40% at end of FY22. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Our capital, like our net worth by FY22 March will be 3,100 crore, and as against 7,000 crore, like it is more or less 40%.
Got it. Thank you very much, ma'am, for the detailed answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Renish Harishbhai Bua from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. Congrats on a great set of numbers, in a challenging time. So, ma'am, just one clarification on the provisioning pool, which we are having at roughly 4 billion. So how much of this is towards NPA provision and how much of this is, still lying as a management outlay?
So we have 412 crore provision on the balance sheet.
Hello.
And so I think.
Can you hear us, Renish? Hello, can you hear us? Operator, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Hello.
Sir, we can hear you. Please proceed.
So out of 412 crores, 54 crores is towards standard provisions, ST towards stage 2 and stage 3 portfolio.
Okay. So is there any provisioning buffer which we have as on March, or entire 412 is utilized? While calculating the net NPA number of 1.4, how much of this 112 crores we are utilizing?
Basically the provision cover that we have is almost like 80% on all 60 plus loans. So while we earlier we have taken 50 to 60% on 60 plus DPD loans, this time we have increased that from 60% to 80% range. But other than this, we don't have any overlay.
But if you see, one cushion what we have done is that we have written off the portfolio. If you see what we have written off in December and what we have collected, so almost we have collected 20 crores out of 200 crores write-off. And we
Got it.
In 3 months. And we expect similar kind of collections in April, May, June.
Got it.
So our write-off is almost 300 crores, 360 crores.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. So now my next question is on the cost. Okay, so even in your estimation for FY22, we have assumed a 3% cost to asset will remain where it is. But looking at our cost structure, as you speak today, of course the FY21 growth has largely came from the same set of borrowers, wherein the no incremental cost is involved. But how, why you expect this cost to asset will remain where it is? Are we not planning to add infrastructure in FY22, or maybe we are assuming the incremental growth will also come from the same set of borrowers? What is the thought process behind assuming the same cost to asset?
So basically, Renish, as I mentioned, so it's the same set of people who work on business expansion and also collections. So depending upon how the situation prevails, last year what we have done was we acquired about 150,000 new clients. But we allowed very few branches, these branches had over 98% recovery rate. So and of course we are assuming 10%, at least 10 to 15% growth in the number of borrowers in the form of acquisition of new clients. But again, I don't think that we are looking at acquiring any other normal year. So and again, when I looked at the cycle-wise collection efficiency, so to my surprise, the first cycle borrowers, where the loan size is small, and then again the loan tenor is much lesser than compared with the senior borrowers. But still, the default rate with the first cycle borrowers is very, very high. So at this point in time, while the situation is still fluid, so we do not want to acquire more number of clients And again, credit assistants like doing the same mistake in terms of not doing thorough appraisal while they are really spending disproportionate time. So I don't think that like we are looking at new borrowers like more than 2-3 lakhs this year as well.
Got it.
The growth is coming more from existing borrowers. Like naturally, like when it comes to next cycle, like 15% kind of growth in ticket size will be there.
Got it. Okay. But in a normalized year, so let's say when things normalize, and broadly beyond FY22, ideally this cost to asset should inch up, right? I mean, once we start acquiring the new borrowers.
There are two things, Renish, we have to see here. See, by September, we feel that our monthly collections will be almost 95% of the total portfolio. So wherein our credit assistants have to spend time only between 2 to 10 on collections, even though they have left up with something, that may extend till 15. So next 15 days they have time, and they can only focus on the new client acquisition or disbursing to the existing borrowers. And other point is that the incentive structure is totally different between a performing branch and non-performing branch. Performing branch they have more incentives on disbursements, whereas non-performing branch will have on collection. So based on the incentives are not paid on both the things on collections and new client acquisition. So based on the performance, we keep on changing. So the cost will remain same, but the kind of incentives what credit assistants will get may vary from time to time and branch to branch.
And for example, branches having less than 1,000 borrowers, so they completely focus on acquisition of new clients, and they get more incentives on acquisition of new clients versus an existing branch which has 4,000 borrowers. They will get incentive on loans disbursed to the existing borrowers. But whereas a branch which has less than 1,000 borrowers, they cannot disburse more loans to the existing borrowers, and they don't get that incentive. So as such, like, the cost structure doesn't really change much.
Got it. So basically, the incremental cost of acquisition will be by and large will offset by the productivity improvement is what Abdul you are saying, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Abdul.
The new clients acquisition is not happening to that extent. That incentive they don't get. That is how, like, for example, compared to FY20, FY21, the cost is reduced because like there is no acquisition of new clients, and to that extent, like that incentive was very less.
Got it. But ma'am, in the meantime, do we have tweaked the incentive structure, more towards the collection, or the incentive structure is the same, let's say, even at the pre-COVID, parameters?
The incentive structure is more towards collections, but again, like the performing branches, like they get very, very high incentive, and non-performing branches get like less incentive, so that it gets averaged out.
Got it. Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, and best of luck for the coming quarters, ma'am.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sanket Chheda from B&K Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good evening, ma'am. So my question was, in the opening remarks you alluded that if we bake in the 2-3% extra provisioning, still we are likely to do an ROA of about 5 to 6%. So any upside or downside to that estimate, considering if we consider a scenario which gets normalized by June, July?
Yeah, it's the same assumption, Saket. So if like the lockdown ends, say by like 15th June, I think like this 2 to 3% additional provision will really take care of like the new impairment which we are expecting to be caused by the second wave. Unless and until like it further increases, say for example like it is there like in July, August, then we need to really look back. Otherwise, right now I think like this 2 to 3% is very high, and then again borrowers got used to in terms of like Gone are the days like where we used to feel that if the borrower has skipped one installment and there is no possibility in terms of that borrower coming back and repaying. So even one installment missing is considered as a kind of complete default. But now, like what we have seen in the last 1 year, 2% collection efficiency increasing to 98%, 100%. I think like if one installment missing now, it does not mean that like they will not resume. So if this lockdown ends by 15th of June, I'm sure that like our ROA will be at least like 6% minimum with 2 to 3% additional provision.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nidesh Jain from Investec. Please go ahead.
Thanks, ma'am. So first, the 15% non-qualifying assets criteria is on consolidated basis or on standalone basis? I just wanted to understand how large this financial book can become from a regulatory standpoint.
Hi, Nidesh. So we are given the understanding that like it is a standalone basis. So while like Risk Financial being an NBFC, so it doesn't have any restriction in terms of doing other loan products, but it cannot do microfinance because it can have microfinance to a maximum extent of 10 or 15%, 10%. So, but otherwise, like it is not seen at a consolidated level.
And what are the long-term plans for this entity? Will it operate only in these two states of AP Telangana, or will you plan to expand its operation outside these two states?
We definitely want to expand. To begin with, I think we will expand to Karnataka, and like we are already there in Tamil Nadu. Of course, SSF and Spandana is operating in Tamil Nadu. Over it, and there are lab branches. Those branches will be moved to CFL. So it will expand to other states. But right now the focus is on gold loans and Andhra Pradesh and Telangana.
And
last, we are looking at Karnataka.
Sure. And lastly, any comment on the harmonization guidelines? What is expected in those guidelines with respect to your conversation with the regulator or the industry body? What are your expectations in those guidelines and impact on our business model?
In the recent video conferencing that we had with the governor, like we once again highlighted, so we even mentioned that like today, like the smaller MFIs like who are raising money at 14%, so they have a cap in terms of charging only 22%. So which means like they are not getting the 12%, but like the margin is reduced to 8%. And we once again highlighted, and whereas banks like whose cost of fund is now 4% and they are charging 24%, which means like their margin is 20%. So it is the same borrower and she is taking one loan from the bank, one loan from MFI. So here like we are charging 20%, there she is paying 24%. And here like the margin is 10%, there like the margin is 20%. So it's definitely not a level playing field. And again, whatever the customer protection that RBI has in their mind, so that is not really getting served. So the governor acknowledged and said that yes, like it is understood and we are working on this, like we have taken up internally and we are working on it. And I think what we understood is like by June end, the guidelines are expected.
Sure. Thanks, ma'am. That's it from my side.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nikhil Rungta from Nippon India Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi ma'am. Thanks for this opportunity. Just one question from my side. Ma'am, as a MFI industry, we have seen some of the other crises coming in every 3-4 years, but those crises were at one point of time. This is the first crisis which we have seen is there for an elongated period of time. Say last year as well, we had significant provision. This year also, we have abnormal provisions. So what type of future do you see for the MFI industry, and what are the structural change the industry might go through because of this first of its type of kind of crisis?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So I think initially there was a gap, like 2006, like there was a Krishna crisis, and 2010, like there was a AP crisis. So there was like 3-4 years gap between like the major crises. And again, like 2016, there was a demon. And then again, so we were all talking about in terms of like the importance of an MFI getting diversified geographically, because like we till AP happened, we never thought that like the entire state will get impacted. But again, once like we have seen AP crisis, then we all thought that we should be geographically diversified across states, so that like we will be in a safe thing. But again, 2016, so like while we were just out of AP crisis, and it impacted like multiple states, and while like we took like 2-3 years to manage that and again build the book, and this time like what we have seen is like there is a problem which has impacted like the entire nation, like the country. So in terms of like an MFI, so if not diversified, so just doing microfinance as a business, like for any reason, if the crises continue like this, but again at the same time, like if I see, for example, like 2017, our net worth was 500 crore, and today like it is 2,700 crore. And which means like the net worth increased by 2,000 crore. And what we added like in terms of raising was, so 900 crore that we raised, and 200 crore IPO, 300, 400 crore. So 1,300 crore that we raised, but 1,000 crore is like a part that considering like whatever provisions that we made. So we made 1,000 crore profit. And again, I think like an MFI has to have the scale, an MFI has to have efficiency. But like this is something like which we have done, but like it is not the same with the smaller ones. The smaller ones who have not diversified, because like every time, like for example, fortunately this time South is doing so well. Like if somebody who is not operating in South, they have higher impact. So like you need to have very, like these are some of the important lessons that we learned from AP crisis. One, like you need to have very strong capital base, more than 30%, which is very important. And like you should not leverage like 6 times, 7 times, like in the name of on balance sheet, off balance sheet, and all that. That is very important. And again, at the end of the day, like the team is very important. The kind of team that you have, like whether they will be able to stay with you during crisis situation. During AP, I think like the team was with us, like we were able to overcome. So these are some of the important lessons that we learned. I don't think that like last year, this year, like the same thing is going to be repeated. But again, so for every MFI, I think and again, this today you cannot price anything. So like the credit cost has increased. So but again, can you price it? You cannot price. And in the last 1 year, like quarter on quarter, the prime lending rate, like it got reduced, and like the maximum interest rate that we could charge has come down to 20%. So situation is not that encouraging, I think, like but again, so we need to have a debate with the regulator in terms of freeing up the market, not only in terms of pricing, but in terms of helping us in terms of diversifying the market, diversifying the segment. Because like every crisis, like it's this particular segment which gets majorly impacted. And again, like our dependence on people, like in terms of employees. For example, like when it comes to LAP borrowers, like we do collections through NASH. So we don't have to go. And when it comes to gold, like it's a totally different secure kind of thing. I think diversification across segments, across products is critical, I believe. And again, RBI should allow MFIs.
This is helpful, ma'am. Very helpful. Ma'am, just a continuation. Many states are preparing for wave third now, wave three. So how is the industry prepared for that? I mean, we are not yet out of wave two, and we are talking about provision of 2 to 3% additional on the portfolio made after the wave one. So do you think the incremental portfolio which we make out after this wave two will start preparing for wave three as well?
So for example, like nobody talked about wave 2, but wave 2 was there. So now everybody is talking about wave 3. So like I'm expecting that like it will not be there. But again, the only thing that we are doing at this point in time in terms of preparing for future crises is so like we are having multiple debates in terms of like how to enable borrower to pay. To make the payment like without the loan officer going there, sitting there, and so the digital collections, the part.
Hello?
Yeah, so we are working on a digital part, and also like we are looking at like getting into more partnerships with the banks. Instead of just like increasing the on-balance sheet debt, like be it in terms of DA, be it in terms of BC, because out there like the bank will have larger appetite, and again like the bank has more risk appetite also. So in case of crisis, so I think like what is our strength is like because we are close to the borrower, so we can reach out to borrower anytime. Like we can source like loans and we can do the collections. Whereas like
basically the co-lending type of model which we discussed in the last call.
May not be co-lending, because again co-lending like how suitable that is like for microfinance is a question, but like more BC arrangements, like MFIs get commission.
Okay.
You don't have to take your balance sheet risk.
Sure, ma'am. This is very helpful. Thank you so much, and all the best for the future.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Balkrishna Vagasia from AXA Noun Investments. Please go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am. My question is related to the borrower cycles. Can you tell me what are the percentage of borrower for different cycles?
Portfolio cuts. Yeah, I have. So we have 21% first cycle and 11% in second cycle. Huh?
1 minute.
Balakrishna, what was your question? Okay, okay, sorry. Yeah, so we have 16% borrowers in first cycle, 33% in second cycle, and 21% in third cycle, and 31% more than fourth cycle.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. And the second question is related to marginal cost of borrowing in quarter 4. Can you tell me what is the marginal cost of borrowing in quarter 4?
It is 10.85%, Balakrishna.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ojasvi Kicha from TCG AMC. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for this opportunity. My question is regarding collection efficiency in Karnataka, if you can throw some color. Earlier during the call, you mentioned collection efficiency dropping to 92%, from 96% in March. So, if you can, throw some color on the collection efficiency in Karnataka, and is it, meaningfully different in urban versus rural? Thank you.
Karnataka collection efficiency without considering arrears and pre-closures in January was 92%. That increased to 96% in February, and again it got reduced to 94% in March. But again April, like it has done very well. it was 95%, but in May, so it is still at 82%.
Sure, ma'am. Is it anything meaningfully different in rural versus urban? Any trends?
In fact, but again, looking at the data, I don't know how did we really classify a borrower as rural or urban. But in terms of collection efficiency, I was thinking that the default rates of urban borrowers should be higher compared to rural, but the data is not showing up.
Okay, sure, ma'am. Many thanks.
And again, for example, loans used for education have higher default rates versus loans used for renovation of homes. I don't know. Maybe the loans which are being used for home renovation by the senior most clients. So basically, in the first cycle, they use a loan amount to repay the expensive loan. Second cycle, they use to start an income generating activity. Third, fourth cycles, they still use that loan amount to build that business. But when it comes to fifth cycle, they generally think of using the loan amount for home renovation and all. That could be the reason where, since the senior borrowers, once they cross 3 cycles, irrespective of their loan size is much higher compared to first cycle, but those borrowers are repaying much better.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rama Minakshi from Hero FinCorp. Please go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am. You already touched upon the digitization as one of the solutions for collection. My question is relating to that only. Do you think the digitization will be feasible for MFI industry? And would that be the solution to handle such crisis situations?
We have 7 lakh villages in India, and I think we still have less than 150,000 bank branches. There are many small villages not having any bank branch. These borrowers, if they have to deposit their cash in a bank, they have to travel 20 to 30 kilometers. And they earn cash on a daily basis. So it is very difficult for these borrowers to travel once in a week or once in 15 days to go and deposit cash in the bank. Unless and until the cash is deposited in the bank, of course, there are number of BC points available, but not every small village has this. I don't think that it will give you a permanent solution, but again, at least borrowers from urban and where the bank branch is nearby, and borrowers from revenue villages where there are bank branches, mandal headquarters, block headquarters, district headquarters. So at least this can help those borrowers to minimize the trips that are to be made by loan officers.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I now hand the conference over to Ms. Padmaja Reddy for closing comments. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you all for your time and patience, and look forward to meeting you with a good news at least for the next quarter. Thanks once again, all of you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Spandana Spurti Financial Limited, that concludes this conference. We thank you all for joining us, and now disconnect your lines.